Welcome to the Online Great Books podcast, brought to you by OnlineGreatBooks.com, where we talk about the good life, the great books, great conversation, and great ideas.
Hello, dear listener. Welcome back to the Online Great Books podcast. This is Brett. I am the producer, and let me tell you a little something about being the producer of the Online Great Books podcast. At the very beginning of the show, you know, Scott will say, Brett's already told us about what we're going to be discussing today. And if I've done my job, I have. So this time, 5 minutes before I heard him say that in the show that you're about to hear, I'm looking at the files he sent, and I said, the Silmarillion. I wonder what that is. Well, now I know. And I think I'm telling you this as a kind of a warning. Like, if you don't know what the Silmarillion is, you might be stepping into a bit of a rabbit hole. And that's okay. I'm in it. I'm deep in it. And I'm enjoying myself. All I'm saying is beware of your next step. I'm telling you that fresh out of watching a video called The Complete Timeline of Middle-earth. It's about 30 minutes long. Certainly, the nerds are outraged. How could he not have known what the Silmarillion is? Well, now I know. And I'm better for it. I know about the Valar. I know about the children of the Luvatar. I know who Este is. I know who Ulmo is. I know who Melkor is. Wait till I tell you about Melkor. I'm not going to. I'm going to let Scott and Karl do that in the show that you're about to hear. So anyway, the Silmarillion is J.R.R. Tolkien's mythopoesis behind the entire Lord of the Rings story. It is his complete history of Middle-earth. The Silmarillion is actually composed of 5 books. The first 2 books cover mythology and creation narratives. The third is the story of the Silmarils. You're going to learn about that. And the 4th and 5th books talk about the emergence of man in this Middle-earth universe. Until 1977, these were unpublished manuscripts by J.R.R. Tolkien. They were edited and published by his son Christopher and fantasy writer Guy Kay. So that's what you're getting into. It is an adventure. I enjoyed it very much. This week's show is a bit shorter than next week's. And that's just because I wanted to find a stopping point for today that made sense. And I didn't want to abruptly end in the middle of a story. So here we go with Scott and Karl's discussion of the Silmarillion, the backstory, the history of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Thank you for listening.
I'm Scott Hambrick.
I'm Karl Shute.
And Brett's already told him what we're going to do.
Oh, so why do we do this?
I don't know. All right, that's the show. Thank you guys so much for listening. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't listen to the show because I don't like listening to myself. But I have been listening to the first 5 to 10 minutes of the show. Well, first 5 minutes of the shows because it has the wonderful Brett Venot giving commentary on what we're going to talk about. He's good at this stuff. He should have his own show.
Yeah, he should. He should.
Well, it's up to him. But if he did, I would certainly listen to it.
Maybe someday. Yeah, you do the opposite of what everybody else does. Everybody else skips the first 15 minutes because they don't want to hear the fencing and tater talk.
That's the best stuff.
Yeah, tater talk with Karl and Scott.
That will not be the title of our homesteading podcast.
Rethink that. Tater talk is pretty awesome, actually. I just threw that. I mean, that just came to mind. A little improv there. It's pretty good.
Yes, it would be welcome. You know, it would open up with Beethoven, of course, okay. 6th Symphony.
The pastoral stuff.
We would say, welcome to Works and Days, and you would be in the background saying, Tater Talk!
Yeah, that's right, yelling about it. Yeah.
It's Tater Talk!
There's your alliteration.
Yeah, it does have alliteration, but potato.
Yeah, boring.
So, one of the authors that I really like, not so secretly, is Dean Koontz. And he cranks out a whole bunch of potboilers, thrillers. He's got a generally Catholic sensibility. His good guys are good guys. His bad guys are delightfully bad. And he had this series. I'm just looking up his bibliography. Oh gosh, it goes on and on and on and on and on. But he had this series called Odd Thomas, the first book of which is really, really good, and the rest of which are pretty good. And in it, like one of the characters, I think it's Odd. His name is Odd. He knows the names of all of the trees. And so he doesn't say oak tree. I mean, he might call it an oak tree, but there was a fine example of a Quercus albus.
He just says, Steve.
Across the street.
Oh, that kind of name.
Yeah, he'll give the whole name of the tree. Well, why do you do this? One character asks him somewhere in the books. He says, well, it is respect for creation to know the names of things. And not just say tree. And I'm not very good at that, but I like that thought a lot. I remember I went on we're still in the Tater Talk section, so I remember I went on one date with a girl back in 1997. And we went to the zoo. I went through the primate house. And I knew she wasn't the one, and then it became a bad date after that. Because I want to stop and see the capuchin monkeys. I want to look at them and actually find out what they are. And she's just walking through saying, monkey, 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 another monkey, another monkey. It was over. I wish her well, but not with me.
With some other monkey.
Right. So, potato.
No.
I'm not going to win this. Anyway, so today we're talking about, speaking of names, and we're talking about the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien.
But before we do that, can I read a review or two for you?
Yes.
5 stars from Enjoyer of the Show. He says, definitely check it out.
Enjoyer.
I've been a regular listener for about a year. Karl is great. Scott's a giant douche, but they're both sharp and their conversations are engaging. Worth a listen.
Do you think that you know Enjoyer in real life?
Oh, I don't know. I only know like 8 people. Here's one from BV2447. Great podcast, 5 stars, by the way. I just found this show and I wish I had discovered it sooner. I love the banter and the commentary, even about homesteading, which I have no interest in. all the backhanded compliments. Really, I think I would.
Oh, BV,
yeah.
Thank you.
He says, really, I think I would enjoy listening to any conversation these two have, but the fact that they talk about philosophy is even better. It's just great and so thought-provoking. It makes me want to run out and buy Thomas Aquinas. Hey, listen, one doesn't just run out and buy Thomas. Come on. But you should. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Yeah, a lot of very kind reviewers. Brock says, the very best of rabbit holes. The two hosts are smart, witty, and not experts in literary theory, which means that their discussions about books and essays are understandable and entertaining. There you go. And so on.
Gosh, I hate experts. Don't you hate experts?
More than you know. The more I do things, the more I find out that the experts really legitimately don't know the things they claim to know. You know, go to the county agricultural extension office to talk to the experts, and they just want you to put chemicals on the ground. They don't have any idea how to do anything else, and on and on and on and on. And on and on and on. Oh, here's a 3-star review. Mostly wheat, some chaff. Page of text, second paragraph. The reason I give the podcast only 3 stars is Scott and Karl repeatedly downplay racism and slavery. By Young Fan 9. Hey, rewrite that, give us 1 star, and then fuck off, because you're not actually listening. What are you talking about? So stupid. These people are so stupid. It's so tiresome. So tiresome.
Yeah, I'm not aware that I did that.
Does he want an apology?
Probably. If you're listening, what was his name?
Let me see. I thought I clicked away from it.
Was it Young Fan?
Young Fan 9. Does he want an apology? I'll not apologize or disavow or anything else. So there.
Yeah, young fan, slavery is a constant. It's everywhere. How about that?
Yeah, like I was listening to our last show because I listened to them. Karl, you should do that. And we were talking about, I think you called them debt slaves. I think it's the term you used, where somebody makes a wage, but by the time they discharge all of their debts and obligations, they just really don't have anything. Saying that money exchanged hands and now it's all okay is clearly not right, But young fan, he's figured it out. He's got a bead on us. If you want to know about my views, ask that retard.
Yeah, subjugation is a constant.
Of course.
It is not always with whips, but it's a constant.
Yeah,
and I don't like it. So that's not me minimizing it. I think it's me maximizing it. On the other hand,
right. Do you then believe in the natural slave from page 2 of Aristotle's Politics, book 1?
What does it mean to believe in it?
I mean, do you hold his view?
That there are natural slaves?
Yes.
On some days, not on others.
Yeah.
But that's a statement about anthropology. It's not a statement necessarily about politics.
Right.
Except insofar as politics grow out of anthropology. There are people who rule and there are people who are ruled.
Yes, and his distinction, though, is there are people who are naturally rulers and there are people who are naturally to be ruled,
Oh, sure. Yeah, I saw a video of some rich guys on a private plane who were saying laws are for poor people.
Right.
Because you just have to pay the fine. And at the end, they look in the camera. So, you mad about this? Get rich.
I have a friend that is always called speeding tickets, like the price for being early. One of the things that's most frustrating about the world that we live in is that the supposed rulers, anything like a state of nature, would not be. Like Bill Gates, he's not good at what he got rich at. He has no charisma. I mean, there's nothing that makes him a natural ruler or leader in any way. That's very frustrating. Same thing with Musk. Hey, listen, Musk isn't going to sit just like he didn't save Bitcoin. He's going to turn you all out. It's going to be great. Hold your ankles. But yeah, our rulers aren't. It's very, very frustrating. What are we going to read next, Karl? A little housekeeping. Did you pick out some Gibbon for us?
Yeah, but it's probably going to be the introduction and however long I can stand. I mean, the book is enormous, but influential.
Okay.
We'll pick something out of that. Gibbon, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire in 11
Sounds good.
volumes.
I was looking at, I don't own that one, and I think I should. In fact, it is on my Apocalypse book list at scotthamburg.com. There are some books you should have when the internet fails and the stuff hits the fan.
I found a copy of it on eBay for, I believe, $5,000.
Yeah.
Free shipping.
Free shipping. Hey, way to go.
But you could also get it if you can read your digital stuff. You can get it on Gutenberg.
Yeah. But I want a hard copy one. Harvard has a nice hard copy. Is that what we're going to do next? Is that it?
Sure. Let's do that.
Yeah, we've got a long list. It'll be good. Yeah, so this thing that you had us read, what was it?
The Silmarillion
Mm.
by John Ronald Reuel. Reuel? Tolkien. Not sure how to pronounce the second R in his name. The man that is been completely aped and by George R.R. Martin.
I know.
Yeah, I bet George went and bought an R. Just
Like
so it
it-
could be a double R.
Like on Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, I saw a thing where George Martin was complaining about the resurrection of Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings as not being good drama, not being good from a literary standpoint. It's missing the point. And I'm like, Martin, you need to read the Silmarillion
Like he knows the point of anything anyway.
and know what sort of a being Gandalf is And then you'll find out that the resurrection has to happen, that it is a sign of the mercy of the Valar and perhaps of Iluvatar, and that you're just not getting it. But if you read the Silmarillion, you'll get it. You called it the Begats.
Yeah, good Lord.
What kind of a book is it?
He did not intend for this to be published, right? It says right in the beginning, his son writes the foreword for it. It says that that it was not meant to be published. I'm glad it was published, but you can see, or I think, that it was not ready for prime time. Tolkien is famous for his world building, and this is the work that had to be done for that to be good when we get to those 4 books, The Hobbit and the other 3. But I called it the Begats. It's like reading the Begats in the Old Testament. It's like reading the genealogy of the house of David and so on. And just, it's like the inventory of ships in the Iliad.
Which I love. I think you need to read the inventory of ships because what it does. So what is that, book 3 of the Iliad?
So. It lets you know everybody's got skin in the game.
Yeah, but it also, you read the Iliad, rage, sing goddess, the rage of Peleus, the son of Achilles. All right, so there's this guy Achilles, and there's a person Agamemnon, and they're fighting, but you have no idea who they are. You have no idea in what world they're situated, and it could just be like an isolated, like a spotlight on a stage where the spotlight turns on and there's a table and a wine glass and, the bottom half of a character sitting in a chair, and that's it. And right. You have like the one woman show. That could be the way you experience the Iliad, is just this really isolated thing. No, you go read the catalog of ships and you start to see what else is on the stage. And the lights come up a bit and you see what this world is like and who these seafaring people were and where all their cities were and what their names were. And maybe you don't even know the names or follow them up. People will make lists of every name in the Iliad. I don't think you need to do that.
I have done that.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I have not seen it. But there's a lot of them. But what I think it does is it makes it situates this story in a reality.
Yeah, I don't deny that. But how riveting of a read is it as you're getting on down through that?
Well, I don't go and reread it like I reread other parts, but I'm happy that I read it.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to share with you my catalog of the Iliad. See it?
It is a mind map, dear listener.
Here are the names of gods, Achaeans, horses, and Trojans.
Horses.
Yeah, that's what those. I mean, it's everything that's named. All the horizontal lines are who killed who. So you can go over here and see which Achaean killed who, and which ship he came on, and all that stuff. Yep, it's all here.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yep, Hambrick did it. I send this out to everybody at Online Great Books.
Well, I never got it.
Well, here, I'll send you a link. I haven't had anybody make an addition or a correction. I'm sure this thing is huge, guys. I've spent a lot of time on it. It's huge. I'm sure there are some errors and omissions in there, but you said it's not necessary to do. You're right, but I did it.
Now, let me compare this. So, fantasy before Tolkien, this genre called fantasy, whatever it means, fantasy is like a word for imagination. Whatever it is, Tolkien invented it. There were some things before him, but the stories wouldn't necessarily hold together. For a modern example, I compare this to Star Wars. Okay, you may have heard there were these movies, Star Wars, that happen in a galaxy far, far away. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, a bunch of stuff happened. You had this intriguing figure, Darth Vader. I remember it was 1977. I was in the theater. It was pretty scary. When he force choked that guy, it's also cool. I wanted to do it. I tried. I couldn't. My brother would have, had a bad time if I actually did have the Force. And you want to know more about this universe. You want to know, like, what is a lightsaber? How does the Force work? Where does the Emperor come from? What is a Sith Lord? This stuff that's just mentioned in the story. And that you come to realize that George Lucas had no idea who these people were. Right. That he had put no thought into it. That it was just the barest shell of a universe, and that none of it makes any sense at all. As you could see with, the nerds will perk up here, with the ridiculous introduction of midi-chlorians in Phantom Menace, and then their abandonment after that.
Well, yes, and that's also probably a problem of that thing ending up being written by a committee.
Yeah. It was a story that he came up with entirely on his own, without much forethought, without much afterthought. And it's okay, I guess. You can sit in a theater and eat your popcorn. It's all right. Flashing lights and explosions. This is not what Tolkien did. Tolkien grew with this thing. He says on page XVII in my hard copy, I always had the sense of recording what was already there somewhere, not of inventing. He says, these stories arose in my mind as given things, and as they came separately, so too the links grew. An absorbing, though continually interrupted, labor, especially since, even apart from the necessities of life, the mind would wing to the other pole and spend itself on the linguistics, yet always I had the sense of recording what was always there somewhere, not of inventing. So for him, this is not a story that, I guess I'll concerning hobbits. He's not just going to come up with hobbits out of nowhere. He had them already from when he was a very young person. As far as he can remember, he's had these stories.
The completeness and complexity of that world. You and I were talking about it on the telephone a couple of days ago or a week ago, and I said, I don't know how any one man would have the time to manufacture all of this. Just the time to sit and come up with it and then document it it seems like more than a lifetime's worth of work. And you said, oh, well, he didn't write it. Or he didn't come up with it, I think is what you said, or something like that. I believe this. This thing was flung on him and it wasn't his. I don't know how he could have done it.
Well, his experience of it is that he was discovering it, not that he was inventing it.
Yeah.
Let me figure out, a whole bunch of families of elves. No, it's let me tell the story of the families of elves. There's a difference there.
Is this then a revelation?
Well, when Homer says, "Sing to me, goddess," the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, the modern skeptic will say, well, of course there are not muses. He's just making it all up.
Right.
Well, I don't think so. Even if it's fictional, in scare quotes, I think the experience of it is, at times, discovery. It feels like there's a goddess telling you all of this stuff.
Right.
There's a way the things should fit together, and you can say, well, what did Earendil do with the Silmarillion? Let me sit and remember. It's not let me figure out what he did. It's let me remember what he did. It's like when Socrates talks about recollection. You come to know stuff, but you're not sure how you ever came to know it. So he was doing it his whole life.
I'm willing to be crazier. I'm willing to be crazier than that.
Okay, go ahead.
I told Charity. She said, "Oh, what are you clowns reading?" And I told her we were reading the Silmarillion, and she says, "Well, okay, that's some of that elf stuff. What of it?" And we talked about it a little bit, and she said, "Did you like it?" And I was like, "No, not at all." But I was like, "It's a big deal, though." I said, I think in 5, 6, 7, 800 years, people are going to be confused as to how real that was, just like we're confused as to how real the Iliad is.
Mm-hmm.
and then you give it another 1,500 years or whatever, then it's absolutely true history.
Yeah, well, my point of view on that is it's as true as any other history.
Right.
Maybe more true given the things that he gets right about evil and the corruption of the good and pride and all of that stuff. I mean, that's all true. That's all absolutely true. Whether Fëanor actually made the Silmarils and then took a horrible oath and ended up... Oh, who killed him? Morgoth?
Mm.
Yeah. Whether that actually happened, it should have.
Don't take oaths. Don't take oaths. Yeah, don't do that. It's stupid.
Well, love your own creations lightly.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Fëanor, I guess. Well,
I said it's like the Begats. It's the Old Testament of Tolkien's world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it reads like the Begats. You know, the Begats need to be in there. That doesn't mean that I have to love that. The world building is so complete that he describes the world as flat. I mean, that until a cataclysm happens, that world is flat. And then it unfolds and it becomes round, the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so Charity and I were talking about it, and I said, hey, that's probably what happened. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, until 1492, like, what if it was flat? You know? And it's not that I'm a flat earther, but why can't people's understanding, of course, before Columbus did this, people knew this.
Yes, Archimedes knew.
People knew, okay? But if your understanding of it is as though it were flat, and it allows you from from point A to point B, then it might as well be flat.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when it's flat, so I love the way he did it. He said something about when it becomes rounded after the fall of Numenor, when the world becomes round, the world becomes confined within circularity, so that if you sail west, you end up going east. You can't go as far west as you want because the earth is round. West becomes east. So it's a confining. And so if you have even this myth of the flat earth, you could go sail west. You know, what are you going to do? I mean, whenever I think of Tolkien, I always think of his friend. I often think of his friend C.S. Lewis. He's got this scene where the Dawn Treader sails to the end of the world. There's actually an end of the world. And this one character, Reepicheep, gets out and goes beyond. And it's like, he says, see that? I'm going.
That's
and he's heading beyond the world. Well, there's no beyond the world because now it's been rounded because our Pharazôn of Numenor dared to go west when he shouldn't have. And so we've been confined. I think that's a very suggestive poetic point about the roundness of the world.
I remember being a little kid and being confussed about that. They're like, oh, well, this is the east and this is the west. I'm like, it's the west until you keep going. Like, what do you know, is this very problem, you know? Yeah, our conception of it's kind of stupid. It works, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's this line in one of the Eucharistic prayers that the Roman Catholics use, from the rising of the sun to its setting, may a perfect offering be made. From the rising of the sun to the setting, and you're thinking of it like a flat earther. You're thinking the whole earth is there, and then when the sun rises and where it sets, it's covering everything, and you're sitting at church saying, well, actually it's just the rotation of the planet. Yeah, but poetically that stinks.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't work. Actually, we're on a little blue marble.
Get out with that stuff, man. Come on.
No, expand your heart. Believe at least poetically in the flat earth.
Yeah, I think so.
It's poetically flat. It's not, actually flat. Okay.
Maybe. I don't know. Walk 12 miles.
Looks
Feels
flat.
Close enough.
On the other hand, I can see the towers, the gleaming towers of Chicago from not very far from my house, but I can't see the bottoms of them.
It's because you're too short.
or because they're being bent under the curvature of the earth. I want to read a bit of Tolkien from the introduction, from the letter. It's not allegory. This is where his friend Lewis always apparently liked allegory. He says, I dislike allegory, a conscious and intentional allegory, yet any attempt to explain the purport of myth or fairy tale must use allegorical language. And of course, the more life a story has, the more readily will it be susceptible of allegorical interpretations. Well, I like that bit. The more life a story has, the better the story. You can make all sorts of allegories. So you get to Lord of the Rings, the ring can be all sorts of things. Because it's a rich story that stands on its own as a story situated in a world. Anyway, all this stuff is mainly concerned with, capitalized, fall, mortality, and the machine. With fall, inevitably, with mortality, especially as it affects art and the creative desire, which seems to have no biological function. I'm just skipping on this paragraph. So he's got the fall, immortality, and then both of these alone or together will lead to the desire for power, for making the will more quickly effective, and so to the machine or magic. Which is interesting. This is not Harry Potter. There's no magic in the Lord of the Rings world.
You sure?
There's no Cruciatus curses. There are curses, but they're not people calling up some reservoir of a magic world. What they are people who are really, really good at working with the stuff in the world.
So you think that the ring, the final cause of the ring, is a function of its material cause and its efficient cause?
Its final cause is the dominion over others. It's a bit of technology to enable that to happen.
Okay.
Sauron is really skilled in smithcraft. That's how he makes the ring.
I'll allow it.
It's a machine. It's technology. So Tolkien says, by the last I intend all the use of external plans or devices instead of developments of the inherent inner powers or talents. See, this is what I mean. You read a sentence like that, and you sit and you chew on it. Like, this Tolkien guy's the real deal. He's not just spinning fables. Just think about that. When he means magic, he means all external plans or devices instead of developments of the inherent inner powers or talents, or even the use of these talents with the corruptive motive of dominating, bulldozing the real world, or coercing other wills. So the bad guys might use magic, but it's actually will to power, domination, and the good characters could be just as expert. Well, no, they're more concerned with inner powers or talents, with beauty, with... you get the sense these elves just, at their best, they just kind of sit around having beautiful days.
Seems right.
Yeah, well, what else are you going to do? And then the bad one's like, no, I need more. Or they have their beautiful days and they want it to be forever. I guess we should talk about what's an elf.
Oh, God. Yeah, okay. What is an elf, Karl?
It's like a nature spirit thing. They're tied to the world. They don't die like humans do. What would be their purpose?
Right.
Their purpose would be the tending of the garden, but they're tied to it.
Yeah, they can't ever die. They can't ever get away from it.
Yeah. They live for a really, really long time. I was talking to my wife yesterday, so everybody who's seen the movies knows Galadriel. Galadriel's, 50,000 years old, so when Gimli has a crush on her...
It's gross.
She's really old. She's Elrond's mother-in-law. I found out. I was poring over the family trees in the back. She's his cousin and his mother-in-law. But they live forever. And I was saying to you, I think a week ago, I said, imagine, because you always complain about your welding, that you can't stack dimes well enough. Imagine how good your welding could be if you had 50,000 years to work on it.
Yeah, Gladwell would have to change from 10,000 hours to 11 million hours for mastery. We don't even know what mastery is, maybe. Maybe
you just weld an entire house.
Yeah.
No, it would be the house of many welds deep in the forest.
Yeah, my welding's...
of northeast Oklahoma.
Welding's rough, man.
So they can't leave. What they can do, they're immortal, but the world they're living in isn't. And so they can have regret, and they can see things fading, and that bothers them.
Seems right.
Yeah, it's one long defeat for them.
What literary function do they serve? It's not clear to me. Like, it makes for an interesting story. They tend the garden. They can express regret. They have a perspective that if you write men with their 70 years, they let you tell a story in a different way than you could if only you wrote men. But as I was reading them, I thought, aren't they just like extra man, like better men or perfected man?
Well, I think for the human characters, they become more of a temptation of an immortality that the humans can't have, but the wrong kind of immortality. So there are rational creatures in this world. It's called Arda. There's elves. There's dwarves. Dwarves are kind of funny because they're a mistake. One of the gods of the world wants to imitate the creator, and so he makes his own sub-creations. And Iluvatar, who's the chief god, says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I just couldn't wait. I'll destroy them if you want." But then the chief god gives them, spirits. A bit of the, what does he call it? The fire, the hidden fire, so that they become actually alive and not just little clay things. And so now you have dwarves. So they weren't planned. They weren't in the plan. They were in the second plan. And you have elves and dwarves and humans, and apparently you also have ents and hobbits and all that sort of stuff, but they don't come into the Silmarillion. Humans can die, and it's called the gift of men. It's not the curse. So for humans, it's really interesting. If you read this and think about mortality, the humans can die. They can leave the circle of the world. It's eventually a circle. The elves can't. And the humans don't get it, that it's actually a good thing. That their home isn't here. Because this is Arda, because it's all true history. For the elves, It's here. And so the humans say, well, I see Galadriel, and I want to be like her. I want to live for 50,000 years and tend a never shrinking garden of faded glories. Right. But they can't do it. But they can do other things. So they can. Thought you were going to say something, and then you coughed.
No, I don't have a lot to say about this thing. It was like reading his notes. I'm not saying it's not necessary or wonderful, because I think it is. But good, I mean, the guy can write, and this ain't it. Am I wrong?
Oh gosh, there's some sparkly bits though.
Yeah, there are. There's a great love story in there, and there's some interesting things. But gosh, Karl, I just had to just hold my nose and take it like medicine, man.
You'll come back to it someday.
I doubt it. I really do. Like, I would read the Lord of the Rings.
No, you're going to be out. What's going to happen is you're going to be out tending your sheep or whatever, and you're going to think of the song of the Valar before creation, and you're going to say, you're going to have a chigger, and you're going to say, how did the chiggers get in the song? How does this make the song better? You're going to be out there, you're going to be angry, and you're going to shake your fist at the heavens, maybe. I don't know. Say, how does this make it better? And then you're going to think, well, it does. Somehow it does.
I will trust that it do. I would read Lord of the Rings 6 more times, the trilogy, before I would read this thing again.
That's about the ratio that I've read him. So if I've read the Lord of the Rings 38 times, I've read the Silmarillion 3 times.
Yeah, so I don't want to sound like completely negative about it, but I mean, that's my view of it. There are nerds out there like Ginty who just geek out on it and draw pictures of it all. And I mean, just, oh my God. And just get completely immersed in it. And I understand that, but not I.
Well, I want to dig into it, to bits of it. So this is, do you have a hard copy?
I do not. I
doing digital.
I do not.
This would be the first one, and I don't know how to pronounce these Elvish names.
Oh, there's a pronunciation guide.
Ainulindale. There's a guide in the back. If you want to work on your Elvish. Which is another thing, which is cool and nerd-like, and in Tolkien's case, actually kind of compelling. I have a kid who has his own world that he's been stuck in since he ever started talking. That he's got histories and everything, and I have not yet been captivated by it because he just works out the chronologies. And you got to tell me a story. And it can't be about constitutions and wars, in the abstract. It's got to be like somebody in the war. He'll get to it. But a cool thing about Tolkien is that by profession, he's a philologist. He is a professor of language. He actually was working out these languages just as a hobby, I guess. It's more than a hobby, obviously, because he thinks it feels like he had to do it. So I'm looking at this. Ainulindale. Well, I could look up the roots of that. It's actually in an actual language that nobody spoke but him.
Yeah, he got to invent a language that suited him, that didn't have all these stupid inconsistencies in it like English did. And, he got to do it his way this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good for him. So we have the music of the Ainur is the first bit of the Silmarillion. So you say it's like the begats. This is like, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters.
That's some of the good part of this. Or not, that's the compelling part, the readable part, the yummy part. They literally have begats in this thing. And it has like huge geographical inventory stuff, It's like, oh, forget.
It's got a map. Mine has a map. I love the maps. You just have to kind of share in my enjoyment of this.
I am, Karl. I'm so excited for you that I just can't hardly stand it.
But the way it's described, I remember our friend John Pascarilla read this recently, and he was just floored by this description of the creation as singing.
Mm-hmm.
It's before creation, I guess, and there is the one who makes these other ones that sing before him. And they all think, I could tell you the names. The nerds will like it. The non-nerds will click the channel. There was Eru the one who an artist called Ilúvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad. So it's like God and angels, but angels are singing.
And it's harmonious.
Well, it becomes harmonious, but none of them knows the whole story. And so they're all doing little bits. It's like if you're in an orchestra, if you've had the pleasure of being in an orchestra, you don't actually know what it sounds like from where you're sitting.
Especially if you're the French horn player.
Yeah, you're a French horn player and you've got to play offbeats for 98
There's
measures.
There's nothing worse than being a French horn player in a Sousa concert.
Right.
Bump, 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 bump. On and on and on.
But it's needed.
It's needed. So back to this creation thing. Read that little chunk again, Karl, because I don't have it in front of me on my stupid Kindle.
There was Eru the one who an artist called Ilúvatar, and he made first the Ainur, the holy ones that were the offspring of his thought, and they were with him before aught else was made. And he spoke to them, propounding to them themes of music, and they sang before him, and he was glad.
They were offspring of his thought. So if you go read your Thomas, everything that I saw in his creation narrative here jives with Thomas's conception, which is true, of the unmoved mover and how that motion would come about, etc. Creation is an act of the divine intellect, which is pure act with no potentiality, so on and so on and so on. It's the same creator in this Tolkien book.
Yeah, well, it's a sub-creation. Now, there's this French horn player.
Now, wait a minute. Subcreation.
Yes. Well, because you have the flame imperishable within you, that means that you can do creation yourself.
Well.
But only sort of. Okay, so this is a Tolkien idea. You can't create from nothing. All you could do is subcreate from something.
Unless he's documenting true history. And it's not his creation.
Well, right. Even the Silmarillion is a subcreation. Yeah.
Now, wait a minute.
Yes.
Is it?
Yes. Well, Numenor is Atlantis. And that was real. So there you go. And the elves are all gone because they've all sailed west over the straight road where we have to take the curved road. So,
and you've already shown me how this is this completely jives with the world of Conan.
Yeah, there was an interesting thread on the Twitter by Twitter poster Conan_ESQ. When did Atlantis fall? Tolkien, Howard, in the chronology of deep time, wherein we attempt to understand the articulation of two true accounts of the heroic ages of ancient Earth. And it's a wonderful thread explaining how it's all true, and fitting Conan's world in with Tolkien's world, and which flood are they actually talking about, and where was Numenor, and where was Hyboria, and this is the best of Twitter, is when Anons do threads like that.
Yeah, it is.
It's not blue checks, giving their propaganda. It's describing how Conan, the description of the Edain of the House of Hador matches Conan perfectly. they look the same. It's delightful.
I buy it. And for you clowns that think that that's crazy that I buy it, go read Herodotus and tell me how it differs from this. Not in statement of fact, but in manner and style and weight and completeness and heft, like import. How does it differ? None. It's just not old enough. Like his son just died. We're too close. It's still too warm.
Mm-hmm. Somebody described Christopher Tolkien as a good son of a great father.
A great son to a great father. I mean, what a guy he was. Know, can you imagine? Let's talk about that for a little while. Can you imagine your dad does this monumental work? And Christopher had an impressive intellect too.
Mm-hmm.
But because that was his dad, and because of how he was twisted, he elected to, pick up that work and carry it for his father instead of being his own Christopher.
Selling it all at the garage sale.
Or trying to do his own thing. Or, yeah, we've read the McMurtry book, Lonesome Dove. And his son, James, is a singer-songwriter and records country music. And he's good at it. Well, of course, I think both of them, I think James McMurtry's alive, and he's no Tolkien or anything like that. But his son, if rather than doing that...
Actually, he just died recently.
That's probably good.
Yeah.
But, what if his son had elected to, go through all of his dad's estate, all of his notes, flesh out the world of Lonesome Dove, all of those characters, whatever. And that made that his life's work. That's an interesting choice. That's a special kind of person that would do that. Now imagine being Christopher Tolkien's wife. It's like, well, I'm going to go back to the office and work on Dad's shit again today. Like, that's not an easy life. When the new age of feudal politics emerges here in 2026, we will have new lords arise. What these people amass in terms of power or territory or whatever will be handed to the firstborn, right? Or would have been. Man, that's a terrible job. Being the heir.
Yeah, Christopher, he was born in 1924, so he would sit and listen to these stories. He lived 97 years. these are like bedtime stories to him. It's almost as real to him as they were to the author, maybe more so.
Right.
But I want to talk about the French horn player. So you have this orchestra of the Ainur, and then there's this dude, Melkor, who doesn't like the part that he's been assigned. He starts making his own stuff. So this would be on page 4 of my text edition. To Melkor, among the Ainur had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and he had a share in all the gifts of his brethren. He'd gone often alone into the void places, seeking the imperishable flame. Not sure what that means. I mean, the gift of life, the ability to make new things, I guess. For desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Iluvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Yet he found not the fire, for it is with Iluvatar. But being alone, he'd begun to conceive thoughts of his own, unlike those of his brethren. Some of these thoughts he now wove into his music, and straightway discord arose about him, and many that sang nigh him grew despondent. Their thought was disturbed, and their music faltered. But some began to attune their music to his, rather than to the thought which they had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent song. So he's the French hornist playing Sousa marches who says, hell with this, I'm not playing offbeats anymore. I want to play that trombone melody from Stars and Stripes Forever. Or even something new, and he does. And he's trying to do something new. The problem is, he can't. Or rather, he does something new, but how to describe it? I love the way this is set up. This is like the fall of the angels in Christian mythology. Okay, this is the rebellion of the angels. I want to read a bit more. Then Iluvatar arose, the Ainur perceived that he smiled, and he lifted up his left hand, and a new theme began amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended within, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed, and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Then again Iluvatar rose, and the Ainur perceived his countenance was stern. He lifted up his right hand, and behold, a third theme grew amid the confusion, and it was unlike the others. First it seemed soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds and delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. The music gets better, but it's all still the same music. So Melkor tries to do his discordant jazz licks and thinks he's doing new things. And all he's doing, this is, I want to say the tragedy of Melkor is that he's not God, and he wants to be God, but he can't be.
That's the problem, right? The problem. That's all of them. You can boil them down to that, maybe. I wish Tolkien was here, or Christopher, and I could ask, how much time did Tolkien spend on Christian cosmology and metaphysics? Well, wait a minute, not Christian, because Protestants don't have those things. Catholic metaphysics and cosmology. But because all of this stuff you're talking about the Melkor's fall, essentially, the harmonious nature of the creation, and how the creation is complete and a product of the divine intellect, means that it can't be made more complete or perfected. Your attempt to do that can only be destructive. I wonder if he intuited all of these things, and this is how he saw it, or if he studied it and came about it, through reading Aristotle and reading Aquinas and Boethius and John Donne's and all that.
I don't know exactly what he read. Some details of the biography. He's South African in origin. He was orphaned. His mother had become a Catholic before she died. They were Baptists, I guess. And she died. She was a diabetic before insulin. Type 1, not type 2. And so he was entrusted to the care of a priest, Father Francis Xavier Morgan, at the Birmingham Oratory. who brought him up.
A lot of this stuff is in the Catechism.
So he's subcreating a world that makes sense, probably because he was raised in a world that makes sense. And whatever you think of it, at least 100 years ago, Catholic theology made sense.
Yep.
An integral whole. You're not going to be the guy in the class saying, but wait, have you thought about the problem of evil?
Right. Oh my gosh, I'll tell you what.
I've discovered the problem of evil. No, we've got that. Let me tell you how we've worked it out. And maybe you don't like the way they worked it out, but you're not going to surprise them.
Fix that 1,600 years ago.
That he then writes a very compelling literary creation, but it's not an allegory. It's just, this is as far as I can tell, a good man with good metaphysics who writes and therefore writes good stories. I mean, it doesn't make him into a good writer. He could have been a lousy writer, but he's a good writer.
Yeah, I would say that your son that's world building probably has good metaphysics and all that stuff, but he's not a good writer yet. And what is he? 13? 12?
12.
13? 12, yeah, he's not supposed to be a good writer yet. It's fine. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. Yes. If the metaphysics is right and it's all organized properly, the taxonomy is all right, the whole of the thing is all right, is it really a subcreation?
What do you mean by really?
I mean, you keep saying this is a subcreation, and I don't know that that's true. I mean, it's just more of the same. It's a retelling of the same story, I think.
Yeah.
This is Genesis, man.
It's variations on a theme.
Yeah.
Which, if the key story is correct, that there is a creation, what can you do but do variations on the theme? And you get mad and you say, well, I don't like the theme.
Okay, Melkor, whatever.
It's like, this is why I really like, I don't know how much of a musician he was. I'd be interested to find that out. There are laws of music. Could have done this on the Music and Ideas show, which you should also listen to, dear listener, because we're doing good stuff there. I did listen to the Apocalypse music show, and I thought it was good. But we've done shows about temperament and about the structure of sound itself and why instruments do certain things to us. Music is a thing. You end up discovering it. You cannot make it from scratch. And if you try to make it from scratch, it's a dead end. I'm thinking of you, Miles Davis.
Indian classical music.
If you try to make it from scratch, what can you do? Can you add more harmony than a perfectly tuned fifth? No. So what do you end up doing? You say, well, I'm going to do tone clusters. I'm going to make it atonal. I'm going to lose the sonata form, and I'm just going to, do minimalist. And what you do is you take what's there and you deviate from it and think that you're doing something new.
It ultimately ends up being an art defined by what it isn't.
Right.
And all of that, you skip to the end, it's nihilism.
If all there is being and not being, so if you're not going to hang out in the garden of being, you got to go to the void.
In the case of, late Miles, like you're talking about, I mean, it's essentially a denial of how strings vibrate.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it is. It's a rejection of physics.
Gosh, I love Miles Davis. I tried to like that Bitches Brew album. I cannot.
Yeah,
I cannot like it.
No.
I've tried. I still have it.
If he hadn't named it that, and there hadn't been a Rolling Stone magazine, it would have been nothing. Would have been nothing.
Who's listened to it more than twice? Who says, gosh, I really want to listen to Bitches Brew?
I've tried it many times. I've listened to it 6 or 8 times probably, and it's terrible. Pre-63 Miles, hard to beat.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-60 Miles, even harder to beat, but no, that stuff's no good. But, if you reject these things, you're headed for nihilism.
Yeah, we are nihilists, Lebowski. We believe in nothing. That's all that you can do, So Melkor in the end he becomes the first big bad guy. He's the devil in the story. And he's always fighting what the other Valar is what they're called when they're sent into the world, what they want to do, but it's destructive. So he's like a god of fire. The Valar are sent to the world and bound to it, and he kindles great flames. And so the prehistory of the world is, fire and volcanoes and stuff. And that's Melkor and the Valar fighting. They're trying to make beauty. He's trying to destroy beauty. What other options do you have? If beauty is actually an objective thing, which I think it is, as one of my kids said, it's objective but indefinable, which I think is a nice way to put it. If beauty is a real thing, then you can either work for it or against it. You're not going to create a new beauty. You may create something that partakes of beauty that nobody's ever seen before, but it's got to play on the field of beauty. It can't, like, if tone clusters, I have the piano here. It's just when you play a bunch of notes right next to each other on the keyboard. It's like you just pound your fist onto the keyboard. It's a tone cluster.
Calling it a tone cluster doesn't make it ordered.
It can be useful, if Eric Whitacre does it all the time in his choral music, and it can sound kind of neat, but only when it's on the way to something else. So you could have the not being, the discord, as a preparation for the chord.
Right.
What's the opposite of discord? Of harmony. Yeah. Preparation to return back to the harmony. So it's like an amen, when you go from the dominant seventh back to the tonic, there's a discord in there, and then you resolve it. But you don't stay. If you stay there, it's not its own thing. It's something. Let it resolve. Let it go back. I don't know if that makes any sense. For me, as a young man, I read this when I was a wee child, and I loved the music thing. It had about the same effect to me that it did on Pasquarella.
Yeah.
A way of understanding what a creation would be. The biblical story of creation is told in terms of words, and God said, "Let there be light." And the Genesis story, it's the snake. And, you read that, you're like, why is the snake doing this? What's the point of the temptation? And it's a little obscure. And you read a retelling or reshaping of the story here, and you can get it, especially, if you're a young musician like I was. And you can think, well, yeah, he wants to do his own thing.
Is Melkor the snake, or has he already been tempted by the snake? Is it too late?
In this story, in the Silmarillion, he is not unredeemable yet. Angels, to mystic theology, angels have already made their choice, and there's no reforming them. Melkor, he gets chained and for 3 ages, and then they let him out. The hope is that he'd reformed. So I guess there was some possibility that he might, but he doesn't. So I really like, if you don't read anything, you can just read that bit. I think it's a very cool telling of what creation might be like and how it might go wrong. It's a darn French horn player.
Always is.
If he'd only been content to play offbeats, that would have been cool. So you have a bunch of Valar. I guess they would be the gods of this world. And if you like that sort of thing, drawing charts, you could do that. There's Manwë and Melkor and Ulmo and Varda and Yavanna and Nienna, the one she's interesting. All she does is cry. She's the lady of mercy. She just mercy and pity. And I'm talking to you, McGinty. This is so cool. So there are not just Valar. Valar are like the angels. There's Maiar, which are a little bit lower. Maybe, I don't know how you map them. There are levels of angels. So there's seraphim and cherubim and, thrones, dominations, powers, all that sort of stuff. These would be like down the ladder. So Maiar are not Valar. If you read Lord of the Rings and you're wondering what the heck is a Balrog and where did Gandalf come from? Well, Balrogs are Maya. And so is Gandalf. And he was there at the beginning. And he used to hang out with Nienna, the one that weeps all the time.
What a bummer. Can you imagine hanging out with that broad?
Yeah, I could. Blessed are the sorrowful.
Yeah, that's
Blessed
fine
are
for
those
her,
who
but
mourn.
that's a bummer. I'd have to be moving on.
And so when eventually he gets sent, and this is what George R.R. Martin got wrong, the Istari, the wizards in Lord of the Rings, if you read the Silmarillion, you can see some of where they came from. They were there at the beginning in Valinor, which is where the Valar live off in the west. They were sent back into the east to save it.
Yep.
In other words, Gandalf is he's like angelic. He's been sent with a task, which is to fight Sauron so that Middle-earth not be abandoned. Actually, there were 5 of them, and Saruman went bad, and Radagast only shows up a little bit, and the other 2, who knows where they went. But there's Gandalf, and so when he is killed by the Balrog, he's not done. He gets sent back by the powers that be, because there are powers that be, at least in these stories. And so what if it doesn't fit your dramatic conception, Martin? That was not the point of it. It fits the theological conception of the whole work, that there is help to be found. I don't know, this all nerd stuff, I love it.